Tommy's got the vibes.
Hey guys, welcome back to the vlog. Currently reporting from Austin Airport here in Texas, where I'm actually about to jump on a plane back home to LA. My trip here in Texas was pretty insane. I ended up playing 2 high-stakes sessions at the lodge, and no exaggeration, they were insane both days. Lots of swings, and both streams ended up playing a lot bigger than was anticipated. So without any further ado, let's jump into the interesting hands from the first interesting stream, which was on Saturday. I'll check in with you guys right after. Alright guys, here we are once more in Austin, Texas, playing at the lodge. Today's game is 25-50, but the 100 was on pretty much the whole time, so we can call it 25-50-100. Let's get underway. In this first hand, Trey opens up the action to 400. There's one caller in the big blind, and I call as well from the straddle with 5-3 suited. A little bit wide, but no problem as we flop an open-ender with the backdoor flush draw on Jack 6-4 with one club. Big blind checks, I check it, and now Trey continues for a bet of 800 bucks. Mo folds, and now it's back on me, and we've got an open-ender, like I said, as well as the backdoor flush draw. I think it's a good candidate to check raise with, you know, to balance out the times that I'm going to have 2 pair and sets like pocket 6s and pocket 4s. So I go for it. I make it 2,400 to go. Trey makes the call with his middle pair, and we go to a turn which is the ace of diamonds. Interesting spot now. I think checking definitely has some merit since this card is going to be better for him than for me. But I think continuing to bet also makes sense because I would do that with strong hands. So I put in a small bet of 1,600, trying to set up a 2/3 or so sized all in on the river. But it seems I won't get the chance because Trey now shoves all in with his pair and flush draw. That gives me no choice but to fold, so we start off the day with an L. In the next hand, I am once again in the straddle. This time I have ace 6. Tesla raises to $1,000 in late position, and with a weak ace, I think defending is more than okay. So that's what I do, and we go to a favorable flop. Shout out Andrew Nemi. It's ace, ace 10. That means we've got 3 of a kind against a pre-flop raiser. That's usually going to be good news. But this time I check and Tesla checks it back. Turn card is the 4 of clubs. I decide to bet 1,200 bucks now. Tesla makes the call and we go to a river which is the queen of spades. I think at this point he doesn't have much. Probably going to have like a weak pair or a hand that just missed altogether. So with that in mind, I bet small, $1,400, trying to get value from a smaller pair or perhaps induce a raise. And it seems like that's what ends up happening because Tesla now raises to $5,200. I call right away, of course, not really much value in raising, and folding is out of the question. And it turns out he's got king 5 offsuit, so gotta praise him for having some heart there, but we do end up winning this nearly $15,000 pot. In this next hand, we are once again going to be playing ace 6 offsuit. A little bit different this time though because it's down to 2 players for the stand-up game. You guys, I'm sure, are all familiar with the stand-up game already, so I'm not going to go over those rules again. But it's down to me and Mo on my direct right. He opens up the action at 300, and with an ace, I make the call, just hoping that we can somehow win this pot. A bunch of other players make the call as well, and we see the dream on the flop. It's ace 9-6 rainbow, giving me aces up in a very disguised fashion, I should say. Checks to Mo, who's the pre-flop raiser. He bets 700, and I'm just going to raise right away. No one's going to give me much credit here since, like I said, I'm one of the last 2 players left for stand-up, and if Mo's got an ace, we can start building this pot right away. So I make it 3,000, gets around to Alex, who's got an open ender. He cold calls the 3,000, and now Mo raises again. He makes it $13,700. That's over half of his stack in the pot already in this hand, so when it gets to me, it's time to just go with it. If he's got us beat, so be it. If it's my time to die, then it's my time to die. I'm all in for $45,000. Back around to Alex now, who contemplates his options for a long time. I think he knows that if he hits a straight, he's going to triple up, since most likely Mo and I already have made hands. So maybe it looks like a good gamble to him, but in the end, he ends up folding. Mo does not fold, however. He quickly makes the call with ace king, and we are in great shape to win a big pot here on our first trip back to the lodge this year. We decide to run it twice. Unfortunately, Mo turns a king on the first board, however, so we're not going to win that one. And on the second board, we turn a full house, so it's looking great. But then the last ace in the deck comes out on the river, which means that we get quartered, since we both have aces full of sixes. Essentially, my six is counterfeit. One out to get quartered on that second river card, and it came pretty brutal, but good for TV. And also, how can you not root for this guy? I mean, just look at Mo. He seems like an instant legend to me. Never met him before, but classy dude. And yeah, not the result we were looking for, but at least it couldn't have gone to a nicer guy. We lose like 15 or 20,000 in this pot. In this next hand, Alex opens up the action to 600. This time the $200 straddle was on, I believe. I decide to raise on the button with pocket eights. Calling also fine, but this time I go for the raise. Everyone else folds, so we go heads up to a flop versus Alex, which comes down 10-9-3 with two hearts. Not the best flop for my hand, and really just for all my hands in general. 10 high board's probably a little bit better for Alex, especially this connected. So I check it back when he checks to me, and what do you know? We turn a set. It's the 8 of hearts. It is maybe some good news, bad news, because it brings in straights and flushes, but come on, a set is a set, right? However, Alex seems to like that card as well, because now he leads out for $6,000. That is an overbet compared to the size of the pot, a huge bet. But of course, with 3 of a kind, we can't go anywhere just yet. Even if we are behind, we've got outs to improve to a full house, and that's assuming that we're behind in the first place. Alex is more than capable of bluffing, so I make the call, hoping, of course, that the board pairs on the river, but it does not. It's the 4 of clubs, and that means we just have a set on a somewhat sketchy board. Back on Alex now, and he decides to go for the 200% pot-sized bet, 35,000 into 17K, and that's just a huge bet, making it so that I think we can get away from this hand. Could have some better hands to call with, like hands that have a heart, or pocket jacks, for example, with some removal to straights. But with a set on a board like this, facing such a big bet, I think it's time to let it go. And I do just that. Turns out it was the right decision this time, as Alex had the nut flush. Could have been a cooler on the river if the board paired, but we'll never know. In this next one, the 200 is on once again. Alex raises to 600, and I make it 2,600 on the button, similar to last hand, but this time I've got ace-jack suited. Another good hand, and even much more so, as we flop 3 of a kind. Jack, jack, deuce. Alex checks, and this is a board I'm going to be betting almost always as a pre-flop raiser. 3 of a kind is no exception. I continue for 2,000, and Alex makes the call. Turn card is the 3 of diamonds, and when he checks to me, I think now we can start to split between checking or continuing to bet. This time I decide to lay the trap and check it, and we see the ace of hearts on the river. Alex checks it for a 3rd time, and now of course it's time to go for some value. So I put in around half the size of the pot, $4,400. And as you guys can see, Alex turned a pair, which at this point is just a bluff catcher. So he's deciding what to do. Does he want to turn his hand into a bluff? Does he want to let it go? In the end, he decides to just call and keep me honest. Unfortunately, that's bad timing for him, as this time I've actually got it. Full house over here. Pair of 3s, no good, Alex, and we take this one down. In this next one, action gets all the way to us in the blinds. It's Mo, myself, and Tito. We all limp in, and we flop middle pair with ace-5 offsuit. It's 8-5 deuce rainbow. Mo leads out now for 1,000. I call with middle pair, which in and of itself is questionable, really, mainly because there's a player left to act behind me, and Mo bet huge. He put in 1,000 into like a $400 pot, but I haven't hit much all day, and sometimes that can get a little bit frustrating. So with middle pair, top kicker, we're beating some bluffs, and Mo is more than capable, I think, of betting with a worse hand. So I make the call. Tito folds. And what do you know? We hit 3 of a kind on the turn. The dream card. Unfortunately, Mo now checks it over to me. Time for me to build this pot instead of him. I put in $2,000. Mo makes the call, and we see the 9 of diamonds on the river, which is not my favorite because the most obvious straight draw, which is 6-7, now gets there. But that's not going to stop me from going for some more value. Mo checks again, and now I put in $3,000. And then the bad news arrives as Mo check raises all the way up to 11.5K. It's been a tough day with many weird spots, and this is no exception. this is a really strong line from Mo, and we don't really beat much that he's playing for value. You know, if he's got a straight, we lose. If he's got a full house, we lose. We do beat the other 5 in the deck, but let's be honest, that's just super unlikely, considering we can account for 3 of the 5s. But in the end, because it's Mo, and I know that he likes to gamble, and maybe partially because I've been stuck all day and haven't been able to make too many hands, I decide to call. And this time, miraculously, it pays off as Mo has a 5 himself with a king kicker instead of an ace. So we take this one down, a nearly $30,000 pot headed our way. But looking back on this now, a few days later, from the calmness of my house here in California, I think I should have folded this almost every time, honestly. I know it sounds ridiculous, but anyway, I didn't. We win. Life goes on. Right, so as you guys saw, that game was bananas. Unfortunately, it did not work out for me. I ended up losing somewhere in the neighborhood of $70,000 when it was all said and done. Pretty disappointing when you consider how good the game was. But, you know, it was a good spot, and sometimes that's just how it goes. But with that, we moved to day number 2, which was an even bigger game with more action somehow. So, yeah, without spoiling any results, let's see how this day goes. Maybe I can get back some of that $70,000. Let's go. Okay, guys, here we go. Day 2 at the lodge. We've got our work cut out for us. In this first interesting hand, Alex opens up the button to $600. I believe the $200 straddle was on at this point. And I look down at Queen Jack of clubs in the small blind. Not going to be playing too many hands from the small blind, but I think the times we do, a raise serves us best. So I make it $3,000 to go. Alex makes the call on the button, so we go heads up to a flop, which is 8-7 deuce with 2 clubs. Generally a board that I'm not going to be betting too often, so the times I do, I think a bigger bet makes sense. The other times I'll just be checking, of course, but this time I do bet. I put in a bet of 4,800. Now Alex thinks for a bit with his gut shot and backdoor flush draw and decides to make the call. So we're looking for some help here with the Queen Jack of clubs, and we get it right away. It's the King of clubs giving me a flush. Didn't really expect that after how the previous day went, but of course it's a welcome sight. Now it's time to decide between continuing to bet or checking, and I think the most profitable play is probably to check, because Alex is going to have a flush more often than I will. So I think, you know, if I'm going to be checking over pairs or hands like queens and jacks, then occasionally checking a flush makes some sense for protection and balance, etc. All that nerdy, boring stuff. So this time I do decide to check, and Alex puts in a bet. Another benefit to checking is if Alex was floating the flop with some sort of hand that didn't connect, like the one he has here, we can get some value from bluffs. And that's what's going on here as he puts in $4,500. I make the call looking for a clean river, and that's what we get. It's the 10 of hearts. Well, it's not necessarily the cleanest, but, you know, our hand strength doesn't change. It can improve hands that he might have, like 6-5 suited, though, so that's cool. I check it again, hoping that Alex empties the clip, and sure enough, he announces all in for $19,000. Non-decision from me, of course, with the second nuts. I quickly make the call. Alex says, "You're good," so I don't make him show his cards. Not really interested in making people show the losing hand. Turn over the flush, and we're going to start off this second day on the best note possible by winning a very large pot. Let's see if we can build off that momentum. In this one, I raise it up to 300 with ace king. Get 3 callers before Juan raises from the small blind. She makes it $3,000. A pretty strong play considering that I raised from early position. But we have ace-king, which is an amazing hand, so I don't want to call and let in these other players behind me. I put in another raise of $7,400. Back to her now, and she decides, the hell with it. Pocket tens is a good hand. I'm all in. So she puts in her $25,000. I, of course, waste no time in calling. Ace-king is a great hand. We're beating all bluffs. And if she's got a pocket pair, unless it's aces, we're never going to be in terrible shape. So I put in the money, and just like that, we have a $57,000 pot underway. We elect to run it twice. These situations haven't been too good for me the last few months. I've either chopped or lost almost every single time I'm in a flip situation. Or even better, when I'm in good shape, you know, it hasn't gone great. But this time, we hit an ace on the first board, and then an ace on the second board. I'm just as surprised as you guys. Maybe you're not. Maybe, you're part of the crew that says I run hotter than anybody else. That's fine by me. I'll take that reputation and I'll take this pot. 57,000 going our way, and this session is off to a very hot start. In this next hand, Juan raises from late position to 700, and I look down at 10-7 suited on the button. Think it's not really strong enough to call, so I decide to play it aggressively and raise. I make it $2,400 to go, and it's at this point that I realize I'm not on the button. I'm actually in the small blind. That is a disastrous situation because 10-7 suited is already a pretty bad hand. Now being out of position with my re-raise size being pretty small, it's not great. Juan makes the call though, so we're going to have to figure it out. We go to a flop of Jack 5 deuce with 1 diamond. Well, we've got a backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw, and it's a pretty dry board that I think she'll miss often. And even if she's got like a middling pocket pair, we can take it down. Let's say she has like 6s or something. We can find ways to win this one. And it seems like we'll have to because after I bet 1,700, Juan makes the call, and we get a great turn card. It's the ace of diamonds. So now we pick up the flush draw and can continue applying pressure to smaller pairs. Even if she's got a jack, she's not going to love this card. So I put in another bet, this time $6,000, hoping it works, but it does not. Juan makes the call once again. So just like that, we have 20,000 in the middle, and all I've got is a flush draw. But in theme with how today has gone so far, we get there on the river. It's the Jack of Diamonds giving me a very disguised flush. Of course, as you guys can see, we didn't really get there because Juan has ace jack. She's made a full house when I've made a flush. But of course, I don't know that, so I decide to bet for value. $12,800, targeting any jack or any ace that she might have floated the flop with and then connected on the turn. But after a while, it becomes clear to me that perhaps we are in trouble because Juan starts thinking about it for a while and eventually assembles her entire stack and jams all in for around $50,000. And I don't think this is much of a decision. I fold pretty much right away. I don't think she's going to be bluffing often enough to make this call. And if she's raising for value, we don't really beat any hands. We have no removal to full houses. And yeah, unfortunate situation. Luckily, I was right, and we didn't get bluffed this time. So yeah, we lose a good chunk here, but, I guess it could have been worse. So we lose a good chunk in that hand, but here's the perfect remedy. Pocket aces in this next hand. Straddles on for 200. I open it up to 500, and music to my ears, Tesla announces another raise to 25-25. Great feeling when you have aces and the other guy is putting in more money. Now it's back to me. We've got position and we can decide between just calling and keeping his bluffs in there or raising again. This time I play it straightforward. I make it $10,000 to go, and Tesla doesn't waste much time before calling with 9-7 suited. So we're going to go heads up to a flop, which looks pretty good to me. It's king 5-3 with a flush draw out there. Hoping, of course, that he's got a king. He checks it to me and I bet small, 6,000. Would do this with pretty much all my hands. And then suddenly Tesla check raises all in for nearly $50,000. I don't know what's up with that, but if he's got me beat, he's going to have to show me. I make the call, and suddenly we have an over $100,000 pot underway. And I can't really believe my eyes when he turns over 9-7 suited. You got to respect the man for how much heart he has. Making a move, unfortunately for him, it's the wrong time. We elect to run it twice and end up holding on both boards. So just like that, we are back to having a great day here at the lodge. Let's see if we can keep it going. And keep it going, we will, this time with pocket kings. In this hand, Tito raises to 1,000, Tesla calls on the button, and Doug re-raises to $5,000 from the big blind before I look down at kings in the straddle. With already a raise, a call, and a re-raise ahead of me, well, if someone's got aces, so be it. Pocket kings are a great hand. I'm going to pile more money into the pot. I make it $13,000 to go. Both of the guys on my left fold, but when it gets back to Mr. Polk here in the blinds, he makes the call. So we're going to go heads up to a flop, which is great. Queen 6-4 rainbow. He's got top pair. I've got the over pair. But of course, I don't know that in the moment. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't mildly concerned with pocket queens, because considering that he called another raise pre-flop out of position, he's definitely going to have hands like pocket queens. But, he's also going to have all sorts of other stuff that we're ahead of, like ace queen or pocket jacks, pocket tens. So I put in a bet of 8,000 and Doug makes the call. Turn card's not my favorite. It's the Jack of Hearts. So now we're losing to pocket queens and also pocket jacks, which I suspect he would play in this fashion. Of course, if he's got queen jack suited, we're losing to that as well. So not really sure if we can get 3 streets of value, even though I do have a strong hand. So I decided to check it back in position and see what Doug wants to do on the river, which comes out a 5 of diamonds. Now it's on him, and he puts in a bet of $15,000. No-brainer call for me. Of course, we're losing 2 sets, but we're beating all single pair holdings. I think a raise would be a little bit too thin against a player like Doug, who's pretty much going to fold anything worse, I believe. So I make the call right away, and just like that, we win a 75K pot. We are up around $130,000 at this point. Not bad at all. Well, 2 hands ago, I had aces. Then last hand I had kings. Can you guess what I'm going to have in this one? That's right, pocket queens. In this one, there's a few limpers before Juan makes it 1,000 on the button. I make it 5,000 from the straddle, and then Bulldog puts in another raise on the double straddle on my direct left. He makes it 13K to go. We're pretty deep, so I think putting in another raise would just be a little ridiculous with pocket queens. And of course, folding seems pretty insane as well. So I think a call is the most reasonable option. That's what I do, and we go to a flop, which is terrible. Ace King 5. We're losing to a million hands now, so when I check and he puts in a bet, I just fold right away. And unfortunately, we're up against one of the few hands that we were actually beating, pocket jacks. Frustrating flop, because in like 30 seconds we lose 13K. That sucks. There are plenty of boards where that hand could have gone a little bit better for us, but that's poker. You win some, you lose some. Not a crazy hand or anything, but we do lose a good chunk of chips, so I figured it was worth noting. In this next one, Alex opens up the button, and I look down at pocket sixes in the small blind. Like I said earlier, not going to be playing a lot of hands from the small blind, but the times I do, I think a raise is the way to go. So this time that's what I do. And now Alex puts in another raise to $8,500. Definitely putting a hand like sixes in a weird situation. We might have the best hand, but it's just going to be so tough to win. However, we are on stream, and Alex is someone who's been giving action all day long. So for those reasons, I decide to get in there and see a flop. Who knows, maybe we'll continue running hot and hit a 6, but that's not what happens. It's queen 9-4 all hearts. Couldn't think of many worse flops for a hand like black pocket sixes. I check it over to him, and he puts in a bet. Of course, I just fold right away. And as you guys can see, my man has got himself 5-3 of diamonds, which is pretty much absolutely nothing on this board. And that is a perfect example of how aggression can pay off at the poker table. Sometimes it bites you in the ass. Other times it makes you money like this. Nice hand, Alex. And with that, we move to the last fun hand of the night. In this one, I've got pocket kings once again. Definitely getting hit by the deck tonight. I raise it up to 500, but we don't get exactly the result we were hoping for, as 4 players make the call. That's right, 5 ways going to a flop, which is not great when you have a single pair, even though it is a really good pair. So we go to a flop of jack 9 deuce with 2 hearts. Always going to be sketchy when there's so many players in the pot, so I decide to start with a check when it gets to me. Although I think betting a board like this is fine too. Maybe we can get some value from players trying to steal this one. And it seems that might be the case, because Tesla now puts in a bet with, as you guys can see, ace high, and then Juan raises on the button with queen high. Back to me now, and it's already kind of weird because we're facing a bet and a raise. But of course, I've got pocket kings, can't go anywhere just yet. So I make the call, which is a little weird. And now Tesla makes the call as well. Turn card is the 5 of clubs. And now I check again, being out of position to these 2 maniacs. Tesla checks, and now Juan checks it back, perhaps sensing that someone is trapping her. She is not wrong. So we go to a river, which is the 6 of clubs. Now I think betting is fine, but I decide to check it since Tesla has a high propensity of betting, especially when he senses weakness, and Juan might be laying in the weeds with a hand stronger than me, actually. So I check it. Out of position, I think that's fine. In position, definitely go for a bet, but Tesla checks back, Juan checks back, and we end up winning with our pocket kings. So again, not a huge pot, but definitely nice to take this one down. We make like 8K. And that concludes my night. We continued playing for a few hours, and man, it was a crazy stream. Tesla and Doug had some really interesting hands, and there were just some hilarious moments. But as for myself, I didn't really pick up many playable hands after this. So yeah, it was a good night for me, and as always, I hope you all enjoyed the hands. Stay tuned for some final thoughts. yeah, so the second day I ran a lot better. Results obviously were a lot better. Ended up winning just shy of $100,000, which is my biggest win so far in 2024. No complaints whatsoever. Could have even won more if I gambled a little harder, but the game was pretty big for what I'm comfortable with. I don't ever sell action, so I started to play a little tighter than normal near the end. Not something I'm necessarily proud of, but you know, just being honest with you guys. And I guess that's the nature of playing in these high stakes streams, is sometimes the games end up being way bigger than planned. Like this was supposed to be, I think 2550 or 5100, and near the end we have like 400 straddles on, occasional 800. Yeah, not exactly what I was prepared for, but nevertheless, had a great time and happy to book an overall profit here in Austin, Texas at the lodge. Between two streams, I won like nearly $30,000. So overall, pretty good trip, happy with that. And yeah, we head back to LA on a good note. What's coming up is some more Hustler streams, and then also headed to Vegas in about 2 weeks, I believe. Gonna be playing at Bellagio or Aria or somewhere where I could find a game. So yeah, as always, thank you guys for watching. Thanks to the lodge for having me. Glad to report a positive trip this time around. And I'll be back here, I believe, in April for some more streams and also a potential meetup game with Brad Owen and Andrew Demi. So if you guys are interested, stay tuned. But as always, thank you for the support. Thanks for watching. If you gave this video a thumbs up, we really appreciate that. And I'll see you all next time. Until then, good luck at your local tables. Peace.